This is Omar for BoxNation. I'm joined by someone who had one of the busiest periods in his life as a trainer, and he
Mhm.
just recently had the crazy week with Joseph Parker, and even crazier fight night with Paddy Donovan. And you've got Ben Whittaker in your camp now. That's come out, that news. So there's kind of a lot to go through, Andy. But let's start with Joseph Parker that week in Riyadh, because that was the first one off. Obviously, you guys learnt, just like us, that Daniel Dubois was ill and the board had pulled him out, and Parker went straight into the fight with Martin Bakole. Just talk to me about, Andy, in that process where a few names were mentioned as his trainer. What was going through your head, and what were your thoughts on the Bakole fight getting over the line?
Um, it was a hectic, chaotic time. We were on the way to the press conference. We were in the car. We were almost about to pull up outside of where the event takes place, and we saw it on the phone. The Ring magazine had said that Dubois was being seen by a doctor. That was the first we heard of it. Because it's come from the ring, you know it's probably legitimate, because otherwise you wouldn't have believed it. And so we just pulled in and we took our time to get our thoughts together. And I said, I still like you to fight. It's just as, yeah, I want to fight. So that was our attitude going into the press conference. And people were approaching Joe. You know, you saw what it was like. It was hectic, and it was all decided really at the side of the stage to while the press conference was taking place, the undercard of it. And there was really only two names up for consideration, which was Okoli and Bakoli, and that were deemed to be acceptable. And it was Turkey Al Sheikh who really wanted Bakoli, and Joseph said, "Yeah, we'll take Bakoli." And well, I thought the same. Um, and it was a risky fight, but considering that Joe had been training for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, this guy was in training, but we thought he'd been in the Congo or something. We heard that he was there. I thought, well, if you're gonna fight him, now's the time to do it. And yeah, it was just hectic. You know what I mean? We said yes to it. By the time we got back to the green room, it had been announced online that he was fighting Bacoli, and you saw Joe's reaction. The video went around the world. But he handled the situation like a champion, and shows the strength of his character and his belief in himself, that he went through all this and never wavered, never doubted himself. And we all saw what happened in the fight. He's a total professional, Joseph, and his faith in himself and his belief in God gives him great strength. And yeah, it was a fantastic performance. And yeah, it was. Now we were disappointed because that night he should have been crowned two-time world champion. And there's been no, I know there's been some things since then, but there's been no real proof of the illness of Daniel Dubois. Or I don't know what proof you're going to get anyway, but um, it is suspicious when that day, even the next day, they're talking about him fighting Usyk. Of course, you've been thinking, they've got wind of this. They heard that the Usyk fight might happen, and why risk fighting Joseph, who's in great form? So that's what we believed happened. We don't know what really happened, but that's what I think happened. But Joe enhanced his reputation and enhanced his career by going in with Bacoli and beating him and taking care of business.
Listen, I hear what you're saying, and from your side, I'm sure people watching this can totally understand that you haven't seen any sort of documents or proof of illness. What I would say to that in counter response, we were, told that the British Boxing Board of Control, a doctor and a Saudi doctor looked at him, and the board actually pulled him out of the fight. Daniel, according to their team, wanted to carry on. And I guess another counter argument to that is, I guess he has gone through a whole camp, a lot of costs are incurred. You will know as a trainer yourself, Andy. So do you see that counter argument that that could have been genuine illness?
You might have been feeling it. Listen, He might have been feeling ill, but I would say that's down to his preparation. When you arrive into Saudi Arabia a week before and you're training every day, we went there 3 weeks before. We experienced team, experienced camp. And I'm not saying here they're not experienced, but there's ways to do things, especially when you're traveling now. It's only a 3 hour time difference to adjust to, but it's a long flight and that takes its toll on your body. And this is a whole new environment, and you've got to prepare for that. And well, who's the doctor? Who's the doctor? No, we haven't heard from the doctor. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change anything. And the money that you spend in camp, well, you're going to make twice as much money to fight Usyk. You just take it on the chin because the risk, if you're not feeling great, fighting Joseph and losing to him, losing your title, you're just gonna take it on the chin, that money that you've lost. You're just gonna eat it up, just put it down as a expense and an experience.
So even though the WBO have ordered that fight with Oleksandr Usyk and not yourself, your man Joseph Parker, from what you're saying here, Andy, are you thinking that the Usyk Dubois fight still happens even though that fight's been ordered?
Yeah, and nobody knows what's gonna. Well, nobody knows. There's rumors flying around that they're talking to each other to try and make that fight with Dubois and Usyk. But our preference is to fight Usyk, and we commend Gustavo at the WBO for ordering this fight, because I think Joe deserves the fight. Joe deserves the fight, and um, I think it puts Usyk in a not a difficult. Like, no one can doubt Usyk's credibility or his reputation because of the fights he's had and what he's done in those fights. But if he opts to fight Dubois and vacate his title, someone who he's already beaten and beaten pretty comfortably, who's and decides not to fight Joseph, that's not, it doesn't look too good for him. That's all I would say. It doesn't look too good for him from the fans' point of view and from a fighter's point of view. I'm sure he'll want to defend his belts, and I'm sure he'll want to fight Joe. But well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. They have how many days to enter negotiations? There's not been any of that. I haven't heard anything about that yet. But Joe's got a great manager in David Higgins. He's also got Spencer Brown on his team, so they will be fighting for his side.
Okay. Yeah, of course, in an ideal world, that WBO order goes through and you get your shot at Oleksandr Usyk. Would a scenario where he vacates the WBO and Joe fights someone for the WBO or just gets upgraded straight away as to world champion, how would you feel about that scenario, Andy?
Um, how would I feel about it? I've, we want to. Yeah, listen. Joe's won the world title. Like, he in beating Zhang, who was the interim title. Like, that's beating Zhang as a win. That's at the time. Zhang is just coming from beating Joyce twice. Is as good as a world title win. But you want to win the title in the ring. You don't want to be given the title. It's not going to feel hollow, even though Joe's had two great wins. You know, against Zhang and defended it against Bacoli. Um, you want to take the title in the ring, take it from the champion. If he was to fight for the vacant title against somebody, we'll just have to face. Our preference is always to fight the champion, and that's Usyk.
Of course, you want to get in there with Usyk or you reschedule that fight with Dubois. I look outside, of those two, and he's beaten Wilder, he's beaten Zhang, he's beaten Bacoli just recently. There is one name that springs to mind, and he's got a loss to him. And I know Anthony's last fight was a devastating knockout loss to Daniel Dubois. But if Joseph Parker rematches Anthony Joshua, world title on the line, as I said, he's lost to him, so he's got a chance to revenge that loss. And Anthony Joshua, whether people like it or not, is still a massive, massive draw. Currently, probably the biggest draw in the heavyweight division still, considering Tyson's retired. Would that be a satisfactory resolution, Andy?
I think it's satisfactory resolution, but also a great fight between two of the best heavyweights. Still, Joshua still two of the best heavyweights in the division. And yeah, but what are the chances of that happening? I don't know. Very slim. Like, who's the number one contender at the WBO is Justice Hooney. Um, and he's a very good young fighter. He's from Australia, Tongan Australian, and Joe's obviously a Samoan New Zealander. So there'll be some interest in that fight happening maybe down under, maybe in Australia or New Zealand. But our preference is to fight Usyk.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Just the way boxing is at the moment, a fight with Parker and Joshua rematch can get made because of the finances involved, the way the heavyweight division is. So if that is the let's say the kind of the worst case scenario,
Mm.
you're adamant about this Usyk fight and rightly so, but we live in a world where basically that can get done between Parker and Joshua still.
Yeah, well, if it gets done, it gets done. Joe just wants to fight. Joe doesn't care who he fights. He wants to fight anybody. But what I believe what Joe needs is the challenge. Joe's been on this run of form where he's fought every challenge that is big, like is bigger than the last. You know, he's been stepping up with every contest. Even when it came to Dubois getting sick, Joe wanted the best fight he could get. He didn't want to fight a Coley because it would look like it was a step back for him. No disrespect to him. Now Coley, will do well at heavyweight, and I think he could really be a force at heavyweight, but not hasn't shown that yet. So Joe wants the big fights. Joshua is a massive fight. If it's a world title on the line, Joe approached like every other fight. So yeah, I think Joe needs the fight. Joe's next fight has to be a challenge. It has to be one of the best, whether it's Joshua, Usyk, or Dubois.
Mm. As you said, I've heard things about Usyk Dubois two happening, but I've also heard things about Dubois Joshua two happening. And if that
Mm.
is the case, which is something you'd love, because then that completely frees up Usyk and Parker. There is no other fight to make then for Oleksandr Usyk. So listen, there's a lot I think that's going to get announced in the next couple of weeks, and all these kind of questions will be answered. If Oleksandr Usyk v Joseph Parker is next, Andy, as a consensus number one in the division, Oleksandr Usyk, of course. Just break that fight down for me. And how do you see your man's chances, Joseph, in that? How does he beat Oleksandr Usyk?
I believe Joseph is probably the only heavyweight out there who can really challenge Usyk and is a threat to Usyk. He's a great boxer with speed and coordination, Usyk, and a real boxing IQ. But Joseph also has those things. Um, he's not. Joseph has the stature to match Usyk in terms of his size and ability. He's not the 6 foot 6, 6 foot 7, 6 foot 8 heavyweights who Usyk can. Usyk seems to love those guys, being able to get underneath them, sit underneath them, feint underneath them, make them work at a rate and at a pace they're not comfortable with. But Joe has all the stuff that Usyk has. He can fight at that pace. He has the speed. He has the coordination to match him. And me, like Usyk, I wouldn't compare myself, but I'm a southpaw and I know how to fight southpaws. I know where you can get them and how to position yourself. And obviously, I've been watching Usyk for a long, long time, so I'd be confident in having a good game plan for Joseph.
Okay.
Mm.
Where does Ajit Kabayel fit into all this, you think? It's one heavyweight we haven't spoke about.
Mm. Kabayel is for a real like he's not he's a danger man in the division. All those things I said about Usyk, you could say about Kabayel as well. Small, beats up the big guys, and has the pace and the engine. Very fit, very well conditioned, and all like the tactics he had against his three big fights when he fought Makhmudov,
Sanchez.
uh, yeah, Sanchez, how he boxed and moved with those guys, and then how he attacked Zhang against just like exclusively went to the body with against Zhang. You can see they've got a good strategist in their camp, and their coach, he does a really good job. So yeah, he's a force and he's a threat. Yeah, he's right up there with all of them.
Okay, so moving on to the week after, a bizarre sort of night, really, because your man Paddy was doing so well in there in what was billed as a 50-50 fight going in there with Lewis
Mm.
Crocker. Um, the ending, you were very emotional, understandably, post fight. As you've watched the clips back in the following weeks since, how do you reflect on it? Are the emotions the same for yourself, Andy?
Yeah, I reflect on it being very proud of Paddy and the performance and what he showed. He went into, he went into Lewis Crocker's hometown and he beat him up, really. He took him apart. And Paddy showed his class and ability and um, a little bit of what he can do in the ring. There's a lot more to come from Paddy. So even though the result is a loss, um, it doesn't feel that way because Paddy Paddy showed his promise, and all my faith in Paddy, which I've been put in for years. I've been talking about it. He has been grooming him for stardom since the day we started. Um, he showed that that was justified. Um, the fight itself, you had to be there to experience the atmosphere. It was chaotic in the arena, and the noise and the fans. It was so passionate, and I just think Marcus McDonald lost control of it. I think he bought into Lewis Crocker's acting and complaining. Now, listen, they were both going in with their heads. Both of them had their heads together, but because Lewis was mostly in that position, constantly in that position, and Paddy had to go down to meet him. It looked like Paddy was initiating the headbutts, and Marcus McDonald only like you saw, give him Paddy two warnings, but the second warning is crucial because that creates a desperation in Paddy, and you see what happened. He went for the gears, dropped Lewis Crocker, was going for the finish. The crowd is at fever pitch. The noise you couldn't hear anything, couldn't even hear yourself think, and we think the fight's over, and then next thing Paddy's getting disqualified. Um, in reflecting on that, when you look at it, Crocker's back's to the ropes. Paddy is facing the corner of Crocker, and the referee is facing the corner of Crocker. Paddy's in the motion of throwing the punch. The bell goes and he lands the punch. It was an isolated incident. Marcus McDonald should have said, Lewis Crocker, can you continue? If the answer is no, we'll go to the scorecards. If you continue, we'll give you 5 minutes and we'll finish the fight. That would have been the fair thing to do because Paddy had the fight won at that stage. The fight was the fight was over. Everyone could see that. Um, and as I said, when the referee is facing the Crocker corner, when that incident happens, Billy Nelson jumps up onto the ring and complains, as what a good experienced coach would do. Would started, shouting at the referee that was after the bell and whatever else, and then McDonald just panicked and disqualified Paddy before taking real stock or collecting his thoughts. Um, and I've nothing personally against Marcus McDonald. I don't even know the man, but that was my first time being in a fight where he was involved, and from the start he seemed to have it in for Paddy. And you saw what happened even last night with the Brad Strand fight against Beluda. It's clear he's clearly stood on Strand's foot, and McDonald calls it a knockdown. It's clear as day. He's watching the fight. You can see the two fighters. He stands on the foot and he calls it a knockdown. And it was mad. And I even think back to when Joshua fought Dubois. There was one time when Dubois put Joshua down, and he starts waving his hands like this.
Yeah, we thought the fight was
This
over. Yeah,
this means fight's over.
yeah.
This is what he meant to do. Hands down like this, slip, no knockdown. That's what he meant to do. But he signaled the fight was over. And even that, the emotion of that, Dubois thinks the fight's over. He can relax and that, something like that can throw a fighter off. And him giving Paddy a second warning was instrumental in the chain of events that happened after that, where Paddy goes on to punch slightly, like after the bell, just well, because he didn't hear the bell. It's not that he did it intentionally. Anyway, so it is what it is. But it's not is what it is because this is people's lives and people's careers. The only good thing about it is the whole world saw what happened there, and the whole world saw how good Paddy Donovan is. Um, so this is only the beginning for him, and it will add to the story of his career. You know, you've got to have some adversity in your career, and this is his, and it'll only make him stronger, make him he has more desire to win that world title eventually.
Two-part question to this. So I know on the night you guys said as Team Donovan that you were going to appeal to the IBF and lobby this. And the second part of the question, Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith, have they given you any communication indication that they want to get this rematch on?
Yeah, they're eager for the rematch, but as a promoter, they can't get involved in trying to side with either side for the appeal. But there's an obvious interest in the rematch because it's almost like Groves and Froch. You know, the controversy from the first fight will make the second fight even bigger than ever. Um, and yeah, my co-manager with Paddy Donovan is Keith Sullivan, New York attorney. He contacted Darrell Peoples within the hour of the fight happening, with the end of the fight, and we've lodged a very strong appeal with evidence, and we will see. There's no guarantees with that, but from Paddy's manager and trainer, we have to put our best foot forward and do our best for our fighter, and we will see. There's lots sorts of things that could happen. You know, Boots Ennis is the champion. He's fighting. He's got a fight coming up in a couple of weeks.
Danione.
Um, yeah, Paddy will be at that fight, and um, who knows? It is very possible that Boots Ennis might move up because there's been a lot of talk about that move up and weight if he wins, and then Paddy and Crocker could be for a vacant title. But who knows? Who knows? I can't see. I can't see any way that Lewis Crocker gets back in the ring. Listen, I got nothing against Lewis Crocker, and I'm not running down. He's a great fighter, but Paddy is just a level above. I've said that in the press conference before the fight, and no one wanted to listen, but everyone saw what happened.
Just lastly, to close this off, as I said, you've taken on Ben Whittaker, who's got a big rematch coming up with Liam Cameron. You weren't involved in the first fight, Andy, of course, but we saw really Liam, to a lot of people's surprise, dominate that fight. It was, again, a bizarre ending. So ahead of this rematch, you've taken him on. Why have you taken Ben Whittaker on, and what are your thoughts about the rematch?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think Cameron dominated, but he was doing well in the fight. I think Ben was still probably ahead in the scorecards when what happened when they fell out of the ring. But why have I taken on Ben Whittaker? Because I can see. Well, I don't. It's not huge. He's got huge potential, and I could see that all he needs is structure, discipline, and structure, and someone with experience to guide him. He's a phenomenal boxer, phenomenal athlete, so talented, so skillful, and a pleasure to work with. He's a gentleman, and one of the main questions I got when this news kind of came out was, how are you going to deal with him? Like, you know, me and him, like, actually very similar. He's one of them. Yeah, he's one of the nicest young men I've ever met, and he's a pleasure. As I said in the gym, he wants to learn and he works extremely hard. And yeah, he's gonna be in good shape. It's always gonna be a hard fight with Liam Cameron because he's a good fighter. He's strong, he's tough, and he has a very good style. Effective, and he's effective at his style of fighting. So it's always going to be a tough fight, but just couple of tweaks here and there, and I believe Ben will win.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with you. He's totally different than what he is on camera. He's a very nice, down-to-earth guy, Ben Whitaker. Listen, Andy, appreciate your time. Happy
Very
Paddy's
well.
weekend as well. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, we'll there'll be no celebrating. We're in the gym. We're in the gym, so we won't be celebrating. But um, Might have a sneaky pint of Guinness after the gym. Who knows?
Good man, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for that.
I will see you in Birmingham for that rematch with Ben Whittaker.
See you then.
Take care.
Cheers, Umar.